The board thought they could humiliate her, firing a black woman, CEO, live in front of hundreds of employees. But when she touched a golden USB marked Omega, the livestream exploded and everything changed. If stories of power, justice, and resilience inspire you, subscribe now so you don't miss what comes next. Friday morning on the 42nd floor of Atlas Capital's tower felt like walking into a block of ice. Glass walls, polished steel, sunlight slicing through like a razor. Dr. Maya Johnson arrived exactly at 8 o'clock. She brushed her fingertips across the walnut conference table, testing if it was real. Solid wood, cold, a surface that had heard too many promises. "Sit down," said Richard Holla, not an invitation but an order. His striped tie looked like a warning sign. To his right sat 3 gray-haired board members. To his left, 2 younger ones trying to wear their suits like armor. At the head of the table rested a cardboard box, too neat, too deliberate. "You know why we're here," Richard said. Not a question. Maya pulled out a chair. It slid back smoothly, the sound soft as a sigh. "I assumed this was to review quarterly results," she replied, voice steady. Richard shoved the box toward her. "No, it's to end a misalignment. As of today, you're no longer a fit. Misalignment." They'd used that word before to describe poor neighborhoods, clients without perfect credit, a woman running a laundromat out of her garage. Never thought she'd hear it aimed at her, the CEO who had driven profits up 27% 2 years running. Maya didn't look at the box. She looked at the man across the table, his eyes sliding away even as his lips hammered each word like nails. A soft ping cut through the room. The wall-mounted monitor flickered to life, an internal Zoom call, still running because a junior assistant forgot to close it. Along the bottom, employee avatars lit up one by one, a silent audience. The viewer count ticked up, 102. 168. "We're still connected," the assistant whispered, fumbling with her mouse. "I'll leave it," another board member said. Transparency. Transparency. They could dress humiliation up as principle. Maya heard ice clinking in someone's glass, tiny sounds that reminded her of her mother's chattering teeth in a freezing Detroit winter when the heating bill went unpaid. The memory cut clean, her mother's calloused hand still warm against her face. The promise Maya had made as a child. "If I ever get power, I'll hold the door open for those left outside." Richard tapped his finger on the box. "We expect a clean transition, no headlines. Security will escort you out." Maya drew a long, measured breath, forcing her body not to shake. She opened her bag. A flash of gold metal glinted under the light, a USB drive, etched with the word Omega. She didn't take it out. She just touched it, feeling the weight. "I want to hear the reason," Maya said. "Because the numbers don't tell your story." The platinum blonde woman to Richard's left smiled. The kind of smile people use when they think their cruelty is polite. "Our clients," she said, "expect a more traditional face when they walk through the door." The word dropped into the room like a stone hitting ice. It didn't sink, it scraped loudly across the surface, and everyone pretended not to hear. Maya turned toward the glass wall, where the city spread out, bridges, rooftops, tiny flags on the opposite building. Below, taxes screeched through intersections. In her mind, a spreadsheet unfolded. Growth percentages, net income, loan approvals, staffing analyses, trend lines like subway tracks crisscrossing underground. "Traditional means not me," she said, laying the words down like a tablecloth. "Let's not waste time." Richard raised an eyebrow, as if toasting with a glass of wine. "You're insulting yourself. This is purely professional." Slack notifications exploded across the laptops, audible pings like raindrops on glass. A few messages flashed before. Someone tried to kill the feed. She just pushed through a scholarship fund for East Side kids. This is insane. Don't let them push her out. We're watching. Don't stay silent. Viewer count 287, 346, 512. Maya rested her hand on the 500 box. Corrugated cardboard, rough under her fingers. She imagined what belonged inside her MBA diploma. A few photos with her team at community events, the small cactus from her desk, the kind that survives on almost no water, a survivor. She almost laughed. Maybe the cactus was the most accurate symbol of all. You'll also sign this non-litigation agreement, Richard added, sliding papers her way. Atlas will cover 6 months' salary, and no. Not because she enjoyed fighting, but because she knew some battles had to be fought, or else they'd believe humiliation was always a winning strategy. She picked up the pen, not to sign, but to spin it between her fingers, listening to the faint click of metal, a metronome steadying her pulse. You think you have options? A younger board member sneered, eager to deliver the lesson. Media? Social networks? We control this narrative. You control it until it stops being yours. Maya didn't say it. She only tilted her head. Are you sure the camera's off? The assistant blanched. I'm trying. On the screen, a new name popped in. Alina Cruz, marketing associate. Then it vanished, then reappeared, like a firefly flickering. Maya remembered Elena from a volunteer day at a local elementary school. The shy young Latina had handed out boxes of crayons, whispering to Maya, "Did you ever run out of supplies as a kid?" Maya had smiled, of course. But I learned how to turn fewer crayons into more drawings. Now Alina was somewhere in the building, probably holding her phone to the glass, heart pounding. She hadn't planned to film this. But sometimes choice doesn't knock, it breaks in. This would be better handled privately, the platinum blonde insisted, voice dripping with sugar. You understand, Dr. Johnson, culture is fragile. Not everyone adjusts to change at your pace. Maya laughed once, short and dry. Culture isn't fragile, your power is fragile. The silence afterward stretched like an ice field. Maya glanced at her reflection in the glass. A 40-year-old black woman, blazer sharp, wearing the watch her mother had given her the day she became CEO, her spine straight as steel. I'm not just answering my mother's dream, she thought. I'm answering dreams of kids she never met. Viewer count, 624. 701. 913. Richard pulled off his glasses, wiped them with his tie. Fine, no more dancing around. We want a face that makes clients relax. You make them tense. Because I don't look like the marble busts in your lobby, Maya said. Because I wasn't born into your so-called traditions. You're making this about race, he snapped, as if he hadn't just admitted it himself. Maya set the pen down. It's always about race for those of us who walk into rooms where we're expected to prove we belong invisible. Her phone buzzed once, just once. On the screen, read, no message. Just a silent signal. Ready. She tapped the USB in her bag again, like a climber checking the last anchor before swinging across a cliff. Opened her messages. The cursor blinked. 2 letters were due, but she typed all 4. Go. She didn't send it yet. She studied their faces, Richard's hand twitching on the table. Platinum blonde blinking too fast. The young man licking his lips like his mouth was desert dry. She wanted to remember, not for revenge, but for truth. So no one could ever say she imagined it. You have 30 minutes, Richard said, voice hard as a lock clicking shut. After that, your keycard's dead. 30 minutes, Maya repeated, pressing her palm flat against the glass table. Fingers spread like a pianist testing keys. Plenty of time to change a few things. She hit send. Somewhere in the city, gears began turning. Sealed envelopes sliding out of fax machines. Elevator doors opening for a team in charcoal suits. Encrypted emails leaving outboxes bound for 3 federal agencies. In the space of a heartbeat, the narrative was no longer theirs. Viewer count, 1,201. A red live. Icon glowed like a drop of blood. Alina typed in Slack, "We're watching history. Save everything." Deleted in 4 seconds, but screenshots had already escaped like birds through broken glass. Maya closed the box. She hadn't put a single thing inside. "I'll leave," she said, "after I take back what's mine." "And what's that?" Richard smirked. "This story," Maya said, "and the future of everyone who comes after me." The morning sky outside cleared, a thin cloud ripped open by sunlight. Down below, a car horn wailed long and sharp, like the start of a parade. Inside, Maya rose. Her chair slid back, rubber skimming the floor like a drawn breath. She didn't lower her eyes. Not once. In the hallway, Elena shrank back as Maya emerged, but their eyes met. Elena lifted a trembling thumbs up, awkward, simple, like a paperclip. Maya nodded. Enough to say, "We're in this together." A draft of air stirred the curtains, as though another door had opened nearby. No one touched the box. It sat there waiting, just another cheap prop in a play whose scene had already changed. Maya walked toward the exit, each step carrying the weight of a chosen sentence. Behind her, Richard's phone buzzed 3 times, stopped, then buzzed again, like a panicked heartbeat. But it wasn't hers to carry anymore. She had handed the heart of this story to something bigger, the law, the data, and the crowd that knew what it was seeing. The door opened. Hallway light spilled into the glass room like a verdict. Maya crossed the threshold. The door sealed shut behind her. The cardboard box rattled faintly from the aftershock. On the screen, the red leave icon still burned. And somewhere far below, the first creak of an old system shifting echoed like a warning. Change had already begun. The hallway outside the boardroom smelled faintly of lemon polish and old air conditioning. Maya's heels clicked against the marble, steady and unhurried. Behind her, the muffled buzz of phones and Slack pings built like a swarm. She didn't need to turn around to know the room was unraveling. By the time she reached the glass elevator, her phone vibrated again. A single line of text, ETA 12 minutes. Jonathan Reed never wasted words. Maya exhaled, lifted her chin, and pressed the elevator button. The doors whispered open. She didn't step inside. Not yet. She needed to stay visible. Needed them to know she wasn't hiding. Through the glass, the city sprawled below her, alive with the Friday morning rush. She watched taxis dart like yellow minnows between buses. She watched crowds crossing against the light. Somewhere in that chaos, the first spark of her message was already catching. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a flood of notifications. She scrolled quickly. "This is discrimination. Live on Zoom." Hashtag justice for Maya trending in New York. Clients pulling out. Atlas Capital equals Atlas collapse. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, let the elevator doors close, and turned back toward the boardroom. Inside, chaos had grown teeth. "Turn it off." Richard snapped, jabbing at the assistant's laptop. "I'm trying, sir. But it's already screen recorded. People are sharing it on TikTok. Then block it." "I can't block TikTok, sir." Phones buzzed relentlessly. Board members stared at their screens, color draining from their faces. Their group chats, country club threads, investment circles all lit up with the same screenshots, the same hashtags. The platinum blonde Margaret Whitlow finally broke her composure. "Richard, this is spiraling. If this gets picked up by Bloomberg, it won't." "It already has." Richard froze. His phone screen glared back at him. Bloomberg News inquiry. Comment requested on Atlas Capital, CEO ouster Livestream. He slammed the phone down so hard the table rattled. Coffee sloshed over its rim, leaving a dark ring on polished wood. Maya re-entered the boardroom quietly, almost gently, as though she were the one in control of the meeting. Every head turned. "You left," Richard barked. "I decided to stay." She slid her bag onto the table, calm as a surgeon prepping instruments. "You said I had 30 minutes. It's been 8. The room fell silent. She rested her hands on the leather briefcase, not opening it yet. Instead, she studied them one by one, faces lined with privilege, panic beginning to gnaw at the edges. "Let's not waste time," she said. "Why don't we tell the truth? You're terminated." Richard's voice was brittle, like glass under stress. "Security will escort you out." At that cue, 2 uniformed guards entered. Morris, head of security, led them. His jaw was set, but his eyes flickered. He'd worked with Maya long enough to remember the small things, her stopping to learn every guard's name, her push for internships that had given his daughter her first corporate job. He hesitated. "Dr. Johnson, we need to." Maya's gaze met his. Not pleading, steady. "Do what you think is right, Morris." Slack exploded again. The assistant's laptop dinged like a pinball machine. "She saved my job when they wanted to cut me. Remember when she paid staff out of her bonus during the freeze? I stand with Maya. Viewer count, 4,200, 6,700. 9,000. Elena's stream had crossed platforms. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Each share multiplying. Richard checked his Rolex. A nervous tick he thought looked authoritative. 22 minutes, he muttered. "And then this circus ends." But Maya smiled faintly. "No, Richard. This circus is just beginning." 10 floors below, the revolving glass doors of Atlas Capital spun open. Jonathan Reed strode inside, flanked by 5 associates in charcoal suits. He wasn't the kind of lawyer who needed to raise his voice. His presence was enough. A man who'd built his career dismantling banks that thought they were untouchable. Behind him trailed a rolling suitcase full of case files, thick binders stamped with federal seals. To anyone watching, they looked like soldiers marching with weapons wrapped in paper. The receptionist stammered. "You, sirs? Do you have an appointment?" "We're expected," Reed said simply, flashing a document embossed with the seal of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Security radios crackled. Morris heard the call. "Legal team in the lobby says they represent Dr. Johnson. Do we allow access?" Morris didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on Maya, who sat at the head of the table like she'd never been moved. Finally, he pressed his radio. "Send them up." The elevator chimed. A hush fell over the room. Doors opened with a metallic sigh, and Reed's team stepped out, precise as a drill formation. They moved straight into the boardroom without waiting for permission. "Good morning," Reed said, voice like a steel blade sheathed in velvet. He laid a stack of files on the table with a sound heavier than paper should make. "I'm Jonathan Reed, counsel for Dr. Johnson. I suggest you all sit down. What happens next requires your full attention." Richard shot to his feet. "This is a private personnel matter," Reed cut him off with a raised finger. "Not anymore. You've turned it into a federal case the moment you tied termination to race and gender. And yes," he tapped the stack, "we have proof." Margaret's face drained white. "Proof? What kind of?" Reed slid a transcript across the table. January 14th. Recorded at 3:42 p.m. Quote, "Our clients expect someone who looks the part." Care to explain what looks the part means? Richard's lips parted, but no words came. The assistant's laptop dinged again. Viewer count, 15,600. Comments scrolling too fast to read. Maya leaned back slightly, her hands still resting on her briefcase. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply let silence fill the room until it pressed against every wall. "This is the part," she said softly, "where the story stops belonging to you." And for the first time that morning, she smiled. Jonathan Reed didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The stack of documents he spread across the table was louder than any shout. Audio recordings, transcripts, loan data broken down by race and gender, internal emails. He looked directly at Richard. All of it admissible. All of it already filed. Richard snorted, trying to gather his authority like a coat slipping from his shoulders. Filed where? Reed tapped the top folder. With the SEC, the CFPB, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. 3 weeks ago. Gasps traveled around the table. Margaret pressed a manicured hand to her pearls, as if they could shield her from federal law. This is outrageous, another board member stammered. You can't just record private meetings. Georgia's a one-party consent state, Reed interrupted smoothly. New York too. Dr. Johnson had every right to document conversations where her race and gender were clearly being weaponized against her. Maya finally opened her briefcase. The titanium folder gleamed under the fluorescent light, catching the eye of every person in the room. She slid out a transcript and placed it in front of Richard like a dealer laying down a card. December 15th, she said. Her voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. We need someone who fits the bank's traditional image. That was you, Richard. Color rose in his face. That's taken out of context. January 22nd, Reed read from. Another page. Clients expect a certain cultural alignment. He didn't bother looking up. That was you, Margaret. Her pearl-clutching hand trembled. February 8th, Maya continued. Some leadership styles don't translate in our market. She let the words hang. That was the board, in chorus. The assistants. Laptop dinged again, loud in the silence. Viewer count, 27,400. Comments scrolled so fast they blurred. She has receipts. Never underestimate a black woman who keeps records. Atlas is cooked. One of the younger guards shifted uncomfortably. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He'd left Instagram open, and now his girlfriend was blowing it up with screenshots of the stream. He glanced at Morris, who hadn't moved. Morris's jaw was a locked gate. Richard tried to regroup. This is extortion. You orchestrated this whole circus. Maya looked at him, her gaze as unflinching as stone. I orchestrated nothing. I sat here while you humiliated me. The world responded. Reed slid another folder forward. Option 1. Reinstate Dr. Johnson immediately. Full authority. 3-year contract protection. Atlas funds $5 million. For community lending and submits to federal oversight for 3 years. Option 2. Trial. Discovery opens every email, every text, every backroom comment you've ever made. Subpoenas, depositions, live media coverage. And yes, criminal referrals for discriminatory lending practices. Your choice. Silence. The kind that makes the air itself heavy. Then Margaret's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and the blood drained from her face. It's the Journal. They're already calling it the Atlas implosion. Another board member muttered, My country club thread is roasting me alive. This can't be real. The assistant looked up, eyes wide. Sir, trending hashtags. Hashtag justice for Maya. Hashtag banking while black. Hashtag Atlas collapse. Twitter. TikTok, Facebook leave. It's everywhere. Richard slammed his fist down, rattling coffee cups. Turn it off. The assistant's voice cracked. I can't, it's viral. Maya sat back, folding her hands in her lap. The storm swirled around her, but she looked untouched, almost serene. She thought of her mother again, bundled in layers of coats in that freezing Detroit apartment. Whispering, we survive storms by standing still in the center dot, so she stayed still. Reed pressed the advantage. Gentlemen, ladies, the Federal Reserve has already been notified. Your charter is at risk. If even 5% of your customers pull their deposits, you're insolvent. Another board member groaned. Our largest client just texted Davidson. Construction is moving their accounts. Good morning, Reed said, sliding another document across. That was fast. Slack notifications kept chiming. Employees across the building had stopped working, gathering in hallways, whispering into phones. Some filmed the crowd outside the boardroom doors, dozens of staff pressing close. Listening, capturing the muffled voices for posterity. Viewer count, 39,000, 51,000, 68,000. Elena's TikTok now looped with captions. They're firing a black woman. CEO for being black. Watch this. College students reposted. Activists tagged civil rights groups. Financial analysts added threads breaking down what Atlas's collapse could mean. The comments grew angrier. Louder, more organized. Boycott Atlas. Close your accounts. Call the regulators. Margaret broke first. Her voice cracked like old wood. What happens if we choose option 1? Reed smiled without warmth. Dr. Johnson walks back into her office Monday morning. You issue a public apology. Federal oversight remains, but penalties are reduced for cooperation. And if we don't, then I'll see you in federal court. And the headlines will write themselves. Richard looked around the table, searching for loyalty. He found none. Every set of eyes avoided his. Even the guards looked away. The assistant's laptop dinged one last time. Viewer count, 94,000. The red live icon pulsed like a heartbeat. Maya finally leaned forward, resting her palms on the table. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the room. You gave me 30 minutes to disappear. I used them to bring the truth into the light. This is no longer your meeting. It's mine. The room shivered with the weight of it. And outside, beyond glass walls and screens, the city watched, the nation tuned in, and an old system began to crack. The conference room felt smaller now, as if the glass walls had closed in on themselves. Phones buzzed like hornets, Slack dings ricocheted off the ceiling, and the smell of spilled coffee clung sharp and bitter. Richard Hawley sat rigid at the head of the table, the cardboard box between him and Maya like a barricade. He tapped his Rolex, his grandfather's, the one he bragged about at every gala, but the gesture no longer carried authority. It looked nervous, desperate. Don't you see? He said, voice breaking. This is chaos. She's orchestrated. A mob. We can't let a mob dictate corporate governance. No, Maya said evenly. What you can't let go of is the illusion you're still in control. Jonathan Reed pushed another folder across the table, every movement precise as a blade sliding from its sheath. The Federal Reserve has already scheduled an emergency audit for Monday morning. The Office of the Controller of the Currency is reviewing your charter. If you think this is a mob, Mr. Hawley, it's a mob with badges, subpoenas, and statutory authority. One of the younger board members swore under his breath. Margaret clutched her pearls tighter, knuckles white. This is impossible, another muttered. We can't. You can, Reed cut in. You can choose. Option 1 or option 2. The silence stretched, heavy as concrete. The assistant's laptop dinged again. The viewer count jumped. 113,000. Comments streamed across the feed. Pulling. My account tomorrow. Never banking with Atlas again. Justice for Maya. Morris shifted his stance near the door, arms folded across his chest. He wasn't neutral anymore. He was watching Richard like a man deciding whether to keep obeying orders. Outside the glass, more employees gathered in the hallway. Faces pressed against the frosted panel. Phones lifted, recording. The once private boardroom was now an aquarium. Its fish circling under floodlights. Richard slammed his fist onto the table. We are the board of Atlas Capital. We don't bend to hashtags. You already bent, Maya replied quietly. The moment you tried to erase me in public. And now the world is watching you try to cover it. The platinum blonde board member. Margaret broke. Her voice came out thin, papery. Richard. We can't win this. If we go to trial, he rounded on her. You're with me on this. I was, she said. Until I saw 500,000 people calling our customer service lines in the last 30 minutes. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, face paling. My daughter just texted me from Duke. She said I've made her ashamed. Another. Director pushed back his chair abruptly. Harrison, a silver-haired man who'd mostly kept quiet, stood with his hands braced on the table. His voice shook not from weakness, but fury. "I won't be part of this," he said. "Richard, you've destroyed this bank in less than an hour. Dr. Johnson built it. You tore it apart because you couldn't stand that the person leading. It didn't look like you. Harrison, sit down." "No." Harrison gathered his papers. "I call for an immediate vote, option 1. Richard's face went crimson. "You can't, I just did." Harrison turned to the others. "All in favor?" Hands rose around the table, tentative at first, then firmer. Margaret's, Williams's, 2 younger directors. Harrison's own eyes turned to Richard. The assistant's laptop chimed again. Almost mockingly. Viewer count, 128,000. Comments scrolling like wildfire. "Vote him out. She deserves better." Atlas board equals dinosaurs. Morris stepped forward, his voice steady. "Mr. Hawley, with respect, you should listen. This isn't going away." For the first time all morning, Richard looked rattled. Sweat glistened at his temple. His gaze bounced from the live feed to Reed's folders to Maya's calm face. "This is blackmail," he whispered, but his voice had lost all weight. Reed leaned forward, clasping his hands. "It's called accountability. Something you've avoided your entire career. The question is simple, survival or self-destruction." Maya stood. She hadn't raised her voice once, but now her presence filled the room. "You tried to box me. Up like trash," she said, touching the cardboard box with one finger. "But here's the truth. I don't fit in your box. I never did. And now the world sees that neither does justice." Her reflection stared back at her in the glass wall shoulders. Squared, chin high, eyes hard as flint. She wasn't just a CEO reclaiming her job. She was a symbol of a system cracking under its own hypocrisy. She turned to the board. "You have your choice. One brings reform. The other brings ruin. Decide." The boardroom was silent except for the faint hum of Evachem, the relentless ping of Slack messages. Finally, Margaret's trembling hand went up. Option 1. Then Harrison, option 1. Williams, option 1. Another director, option 1. Richard sat frozen, eyes darting, jaw clenched. He looked at the cardboard box like it might offer him an escape. "It didn't, Mr. Hawley," Reed said softly. "Unanimity is required. Which is it?" Richard stared at Maya across the table. For the first time, his eyes didn't hold contempt. They held fear. His voice came out hoarse, a thread unraveling. Option 1. The assistant's laptop chimed one last time. Viewer count, 142,00. The comments poured in like a victory march. She won. History in the making. Never underestimate a black woman with receipts. Maya exhaled slowly. She didn't smile. Not yet. Winning wasn't about gloating. Winning was about the door she had just kicked open for herself. For Elena outside the glass. For every young professional who'd ever been told they didn't fit the part. She looked at Richard. "You tried to write me out of this story. Instead, you wrote yourself out." And with that, she sat back down, the cardboard box untouched, while the world outside watched a new chapter begin. Monday morning, 8:59, .m. Atlas, Capitol's marble lobby hummed with a tension no bell chime or security scanner could disguise. Employees had gathered, pretending to sip coffee, pretending to check phones. Everyone was waiting. The glass doors parted, and Dr. Maya Johnson walked in. Not a stride of arrogance, not a march of vengeance, just a calm, deliberate walk. She wore a navy blazer sharper than steel, her hair pulled back, her chin high. Her watch ticked softly at her wrist, the same one her mother gave her when she first became CEO. Maurice, head of security, stood at attention near the front desk. He straightened his tie, then stepped forward. "Good morning, Dr. Johnson, he said. This time, the words weren't in order. They were respect. Maya nodded. Good morning, Morris. The staff lining the lobby clapped quietly at first, then louder. Some simply nodded, eyes shining. A few held their phones up, recording, not to shame, not to leak, but to mark history. Near the elevators, Alina Cruz stood with her phone tucked against her chest. She wasn't live streaming. She was documenting for memory, for proof, for herself. How does it feel to be back? She asked, voice trembling. Maya smiled, soft but firm, like coming home. But better, because now everyone knows where they stand. The elevator doors slid open. Maya stepped inside. Silence followed. Her in, then applause chased her up. 2 p.m. press conference. 8 board members sat stiffly behind a banner that read, Atlas Capital, a commitment to equity and justice. The irony of this slogan was lost on no one. Richard Hawley stood at the podium, his tie slightly askew, the Rolex heavy on his wrist. Dark circles sagged under his eyes. His weekend had been sleepless. He gripped the prepared statement with shaking hands. On behalf of the board of directors, he began, I offer our sincere apology to Dr. Johnson for discriminatory treatment that violated both her dignity and federal law. His voice cracked on the word federal. Behind him, Margaret stared at her folded hands, her pearls absent. Harrison's jaw was set, grim but relieved. Richard continued, swallowing hard. We acknowledge that unconscious bias and systemic failures led to decisions that have no place in modern banking. Dr. Johnson's leadership has delivered unprecedented growth and innovation. Effective immediately, she resumes her role as CEO with full authority. Flashbulbs popped, reporters scribbled. Someone called out, Mr. Hawley, do you accept personal responsibility? Richard's pause stretched too long. The crowd murmured. Finally, he exhaled. Yes, my words and actions contributed to a hostile environment. I take full responsibility. The words tasted like ash. But federal oversight demanded truth. 3 months later, Atlas Capital looked different. Not just in the lobby art, though the marble busts had been removed, replaced by murals of community neighborhoods, but in its people. Diversity wasn't a checkbox anymore. It was visible in leadership meetings, in new hires, in promotions that once went only one way. The once exclusive board had expanded to include women, black leaders, and first-generation immigrants who knew the realities of credit desserts. New Roots Fund, seeded with $5 million, was already issuing small business loans to barbershops, bodegas, daycare centers, businesses that had kept neighborhoods alive long before the bank noticed them. Loan approval rates for minority applicants climbed 40%. Deposits surged as communities that once mistrusted Atlas opened accounts, drawn by its public commitment to equity. And through it all, Maya led not as the woman who had been humiliated, but as the woman who had turned humiliation into transformation. At Harvard Business Review's annual leadership forum, Maya took the stage. The audience of executives leaned forward, hungry for insight. I didn't fight for my title, she said. I fought for the right of anyone who looks like me to walk into boardrooms without having to apologize for existing. I fought for the people told they didn't fit the part. Because when you tell someone they don't belong, you're not just dismissing them, you're dismissing the future they represent. Thunderous applause. Not polite, but genuine. Alina, now promoted to Community Outreach Coordinator, spoke on local news. Dr. Johnson turned discrimination into empowerment. She showed us you can use receipts, emails, recordings, data to fight back. That's transformational leadership. Morris's daughter, once an intern, was now a full-time analyst. She told her friends, I saw what accountability looks like. My boss is living proof. Even Harrison, the once quiet director, admitted. At a Chamber of Commerce event, she saved this institution. We tried to throw her out, and she rebuilt us instead. Richard Howley resigned from every community board he once lorded over. Twice a week, reporters spotted him slipping into a courthouse for court-ordered bias counseling. His power had shrunk to a narrow hallway and a clipboard. Margaret vanished from Georgia entirely, relocating to her daughter's city. The country club no longer returned her calls. Their reckoning was personal, but Maya's was systemic. 1 year later, Maya stood before a packed hall at the National Banking Convention. Her keynote was titled, "From Discrimination to Transformation, a Case Study in Accountability." "I'm not extraordinary," she told the room. "I was prepared. I documented. I refused to accept that bias was just the way things are. That's all. And because I stood firm, an institution changed. And because it changed, communities changed. That's how real justice works, not with one person, but with ripples that spread outward." Standing ovation. Executives, many of whom had never questioned their own privilege, stood and clapped until their hands stung. Back at Atlas, in her office, the cardboard box still sat on a shelf. Not as humiliation, but as reminder. Inside, the cactus had been replaced with a thriving bamboo shoot. Green and resilient, Maya often glanced at it during long strategy meetings. A silent promise. Growth from adversity. Strength from pressure. She knew oversight would eventually end. Regulators would leave, but the transformation would remain. Because she hadn't just won her job back. She had rewritten what Atlas Capital could be, and in doing so, she proved something larger. Justice isn't a theory. It's a practice. It's receipts. It's resilience. It's refusing to fit in the box someone else builds for you. Maya smiled, leaned back in her chair, and whispered to herself the line her mother used to say whenever a storm passed. "We survived, and now we build." 3 years later, the gym of a Detroit elementary school smelled like new paint and sharpened pencils. Banners hung from the rafters, bright blues and oranges with block letters that read Financial Literacy Lab. Powered by new roots, rows of fourth graders buzzed. At long folding tables, clutching mock debit cards like golden tickets. Dr. Maya Johnson stood beside a whiteboard drawing a simple budget pie. Rent, food, savings, future you fund. The kids shouted answers, wrong and right in equal measure. She loved the wrong answers. They were proof that curiosity was alive. A hand shot up a thin boy in a Pistons hoodie. "What if you have no money to start?" Maya uncapped a green marker. "Then you start with time. You trade time for money, you learn skills, and you make friends who pull you up when the ladder is missing." He nodded like she'd just handed him a map dot at the back of the gym. Alina Cruz watched with a clipboard and a grin, her hair in a high ponytail, a lanyard stamped VP, Community Development swinging as she moved. She'd traded late-night TikToks for grant proposals and city permits. Half the room was here because Alina could knock on a door until a wall thought it was a door. "Board meeting at 2, she murmured when Maya stepped off the little stage. "Press wants a quote about the Cleveland rollout. And the feds." Letter it finally came. Maya's brows lifted. "Today?" Elena nodded, eyes bright. "On your desk." They crossed the gym together, weaving past kids in paper banker hats, past a mural of the neighborhood painted by local teenagers' corner. Stores, bus stops, a mother pushing a stroller past a row house with sunflowers taller than the porch. Maya made a point of stopping to thank each volunteer. The retired math teacher tallying points at the loan game. The single dad running the good debt, bad debt booth. The high school sophomore explaining compound interest like a magician. Revealing a trick. "See you next Saturday?" She asked the sophomore. He puffed out his chest. "Yes, ma'am. I'm saving to start a lawn business." "Got 3 clients. Make it 5, Maya said. "I'll be 2 of them." Back at Atlas Capital, the marble lobby no longer amplified footsteps like they were verdicts. It had a softer echo now: laughter, children's field trips, the squeak of sneakers visiting the in-house branch classroom on Fridays. The busts of old founders had given way to a gallery of small business owners, funded by new roots. A barber with cobalt blue walls, a Somali baker balancing trays of sambusa with a shy smile, a Latina daycare owner with 12 toddlers and a patience that felt like magic. Upstairs, sunlight sliced across Maya's office in generous bands. The cardboard box still sat on a bookshelf, no longer a weapon but a reminder. Its once wilted cactus replaced by bamboo that had climbed toward the ceiling and then politely bent. The letter waited on her desk, crest raised, the seal of the Federal Reserve embossed above clean black type. Subject: conclusion of supervisory oversight, Atlas Capital. Maya read the words slowly, then again, letting the meaning turn solid. Not because oversight had ended, that had always been the plan. Because the culture it forced didn't dissolve when the paper lifted. It had sunk roots. Her phone buzzed. Harrison, still on the board. His voice always sounded like a porch chair solid. Wood, the kind that lasts. Congratulations, he said. You did it, we did it, Maya replied. And the neighborhoods did it. You can't reform a bank from a conference room. He chuckled. The new branch on the east side just passed 10,000 accounts. My son-in-law switched over last month. He said your checking app is the first time a bank asked him if he wanted his savings rounded up to a scholarship fund. That was Elena, Maya said. She keeps bending the system until it's useful to real people. Tell her the board approved the Cleveland partnership, Harrison added. Unanimous. And Maya? Yes, I keep a clipping of that. Friday in my desk, not to torture myself. To remember that institutions are only as moral as the people who stand up inside them. When the call ended, Maya stared at the USB drive sitting in a shadow box on the credenza. The gold letters still read Omega. Students who visited on tours always asked what it was. She told them it was a bookmark in a very long story, The Place Where the Plot Turned. A knock at the door. Jonathan Reed stepped in wearing a navy suit and the relaxed smile of a man who'd spent a decade walking into rooms he knew he could transform. Look at that. He nodded at the Fed letter. I remember when Richard thought he could outweight the internet. The internet is not a season, Maya said. It's a climate. Jonathan laughed, sank into the chair opposite. 2 agenda items. 1. Abia wants you to keynote their winter summit. They're rolling out new diversity benchmarks, citing Atlas as a case model. 2. A young woman named Tasha sent me a cold email. First-generation college kid. Wants to be you when she grows up. I told her that job is taken, but we could show her how to be herself with power. Maya's smile broke wide. Omega Fellows. Cohort 4 is recruiting. They walked down to the new training floor together, a space carved from what used to be a storage level. Glass walls looked into small classrooms. On a whiteboard, equations bloomed. On a corkboard, pinned business plans and napkins with scrappy budget scribbles. At a long table, the Omega Fellows hunched over laptops. A woman designing an app for gig workers to smooth out pay cycles. A veteran sketching a credit repair microservice. A former bartender mapping cash flow for a juice truck. At the tables. And a young black woman with a short natural and a blazer that didn't quite fit stood to greet Maya, nerves and pride fighting on her face. Tasha? Maya asked, extending a hand. Yes, Dr. Johnson. The words came out too fast. I followed your hearing. I mean, the live stream. I was a sophomore. I watched it on my phone in the back of my economics class. I didn't know what receipts were before that. Now I keep them. You'll need them, Maya said. Receipts, allies, and sleep. Not in that order. They walked the floor. Jonathan peeled off to review contracts. Maya listened to quick pitches. A daycare co-op seeking a line of credit. A neighborhood CPA coaching first-time homeowners. A mechanic trying to buy the shop he'd kept alive through 3 owners. Every Story was familiar and brand new at the same time. Hard beginnings, shallow pockets. Dreams with sharp edges dotted the corkboard. Tasha pointed to a newspaper clipping. A Cleveland paper covering Atlas's partnership with the city to open a branch. In a former bank desert. My grandmother said she never went in a bank in her life, Tasha said quietly. She kept money in a coffee tin in the freezer. She thought banks were for other people. Last week, she asked me to take her to open an account. Maya stared at the photo, an older woman in a floral dress, her hand on the counter, the teller's hand mirrored on the other side of the glass in a posture that looked like prayer. That's the point, Maya said. Not better headlines. Better firsts. In the afternoon board session, the agenda was almost boring by design. Loan committee updates, compliance numbers exceeding targets, a slide of photos from a ribbon cutting at a bodega that had turned into a community-safe place for teens after school. The Equity and Risk Committee chair, a Nigerian-American economist named Dr. Amara Patel, presented slides with the steady cadence of math that had been taught both to pass a test and to repair a city. We're past performative, she said, a line that would end up quoted on 3 think piece blogs by morning. We're operationalizing equity. It shows up in margins and in mornings. At the meeting's end, Harrison lingered. One more thing, an envelope came to my house. No return address. From Richard. Maya's jaw tightened, then relaxed. What does he want? Nothing, Harrison said, handing over a single page of neat handwriting. It's an apology. She read it later, alone. It didn't erase anything. It didn't pretend to. It simply acknowledged harm out loud and promised a lifelong budget line of time, money, and attention dedicated to people he'd once overlooked. He was volunteering Wednesday nights at a literacy center in a neighborhood he'd only ever driven through on his way somewhere else. She folded the letter and put it in the shadow box behind Omega, not as absolution, but as evidence. People change when the cost of not changing finally exceeds the comfort of standing still. Systems change when 1,000 letters like this accumulate into policy. At dusk, the skyline turned glass to copper. Maya stood in the lobby beside the gallery wall. A little girl in braids tugged her sleeve and pointed at the photo of the Somali baker. Is she famous? She is now, Maya said. The girl squinted. Are you? Maya considered. The word felt too big, too loud. I'm useful. Outside. The city thrummed, the bass of tires, the treble of voices. In the reflection, she could see herself without the cardboard box, without the red leave icon, without the trembling assistant fingers she'd forgiven a long time ago. She could see Elena at the security desk teaching a retiree to download the app. She could see a security guard with a kind face Morris walking his college grad daughter down the stairs, joking about interest rates like other fathers joke about sports. Before locking up, Maya slid a post-it onto the shadow box. We survived, and now we build. She clicked off the office light. The bamboo rustled in the air conditioning like a whisper. On the street, a parade of small revolutions passed by unnoticed, someone signing a lease, someone buying supplies, someone leaving a bank with a receipt that looked like a future. Ripples. Always ripples. From a cardboard box meant to erase her to rebuilding an institution that now serves everyone. Justice didn't just give her back her job, it gave hope to thousands. Subscribe for more true stories that prove change is real and unstoppable.